Hey y'all, welcome and welcome back to my channel. My name is Nataya and this is Nesthetics, where I talk about topics that I care about and you should care about too if you choose. Today we are talking about health disparities and health inequities, what causes them, and social determinants of health. So this topic was inspired by the community health internship I did this past summer at a local Black-owned herb shop named Honeybee Sage Wellness and Apothecary located in Wisconsin. And I highly recommend that you check out this herb shop and support this local Black-owned business if you are in the Wisconsin or surrounding areas. So this past summer, I was a research assistant and project specialist at this site, and I researched all of the herbs in her shop. So herbs are like natural forms of medicine, just like the traditional medicine and pills you take. There are also herbs that are from the earth that you can take as well that are natural forms of medicine. So I researched all the different herbs, and there's literally a herb for everything, like a herb for eczema, diabetes, high blood pressure, any disease ailment you can think of. Just doing this internship really inspired this topic and made me want to talk about the social determinants of health. Social determinants of health are the conditions in the environments where people are born, live, learn, work, play, worship, and age that affect a wide range of health functioning and quality of life outcomes and risks. There are 5 areas of the social determinants of health: economic stability, education quality and access, healthcare access and quality, neighborhood and built environment, and social and community context. So these 5 areas of the social determinants of health, all 5 of these things or areas impact your health. So I'm going to go through each one, starting with economic stability. So economic stability is like income, it's your job, how much money you make, things like that. So if you come from a stable economic background, then of course your health outcomes are going to be better because you don't have to worry about where money is going to come from, or if you have enough money to pay to go to the doctor or even pay for medical expenses and things like that. If you are unstable economically, then the first things that you're worried about are more so like your bills to keep the lights on, make sure you can pay your rent or pay your mortgage, clothes on your back, shoes on your feet, like things like that. Those are the first things you worry about. And if you have health conditions, then it's kind of hard to manage those things if you're not stable economically. Economic stability is also affordable housing and homelessness. There is a large homeless population, and I cannot even imagine what the health outcomes of homeless people are because of they don't have access to food and they don't have access to eat regularly or a house over their head, things like that. The second social determinant of health is education access and quality. So this can include high school dropout rates or graduation rates. This can include literacy and math skills. I personally was an elementary literacy tutor this past year, and I worked with all Black and brown kids, and there's a lot of disparities with literacy and being able to read at your grade level for Black and brown kids, and that can impact your health as well. So many people don't think about how like your literacy and math skills and like the schools that you go to can impact your health. Educational attainment is actually closely tied to health outcomes. So I believe when I was looking at the health.gov website, it was saying that studies have shown that people who actually, finish high school or go to college or have education, that they end up having better health outcomes. Not saying that you have to go to college or anything, but at least like finish high school, get a GED, things like that. Because like if you end up dropping out of school, then it makes it a lot harder also to be economically stable, which goes back to the things that I just talked about before. So literacy and math skills and being able to like read at your level and also do the math skills at your level is actually very important and tied to health. So educational outcomes are very important when it comes to health outcomes. And then also the qualities of schools and the resources Many like black and brown kids, they live in neighborhoods where the schools, they are poor in resources, and they don't get the quality education that they need so that their literacy and math skills can be where they're supposed to be. So I'm happy that this past year I did get to help students out and help them with their literacy skills. It was a pleasure being able to see them improve their skills over time, and also them being happy with them improving their reading skills and starting to love to read even more. The third social determinant of health is healthcare access and quality. So also this goes into like the hospitals that you have access to, and also insurance. Like health insurance is a big thing. Everyone doesn't have health insurance, so if you don't have health insurance, it's really hard to get the care that you need if you have a condition or a chronic disease and you need medication, or you need to go to regular doctor's appointments. If you don't have insurance or a primary physician, it's very hard to upkeep your conditions. So many of us who do have health insurance, we are very privileged and blessed because everyone does not have it. And it can be very difficult to get it, especially depending on your background. So healthcare quality and access definitely does impact health outcomes, and also just hospitals in black and brown neighborhoods, they aren't as good as the hospitals that are like in the more or better parts of town, or like also the hospitals, they might be further away from our neighborhoods so that we don't really have as quick access to them. So that's also an important factor as well, because having to go out of your way just to get the medical attention you need is stressful. And also that goes for rural communities as well, because rural communities, they're in the outskirts and they don't have access to the healthcare quality that they need, or they don't have the readily access where they would have to drive out of their way just to get medical attention. So that definitely impacts health outcomes as well. The fourth social determinant of health is neighborhood and built environment. So this is basically where you live, and a lot of my research that I've done in school has been based on segregation, residential segregation, and how it impacts health. So where you live really impacts your health outcomes, and I'll get more into that soon. But basically, like where you live, like the crime rates could be higher, which can also not impact just like your physical health, but just your mental health as well. So crime rates, that's one thing. Tobacco use, a lot of times neighborhoods, they have liquor stores and drug stores in their areas more so than grocery stores with fresh food. So black and brown people are more so exposed to tobacco and more likely to use it. And then also there's water quality and air quality, which goes into the environmental equity. And then there's also physical activity. I know in my neighborhood, I don't feel comfortable biking and walking. And also not every neighborhood has like the little bike lane where you can bike, So but depending on where you live, it really impacts your health outcomes, because first of all, the access you have to healthy foods, and then also your access to being able to be physically fit and go on walks and bikes and things like that, in combination with the crime rates. Because like if you live in a neighborhood that is known for like crime, or like there's high crime rates, or you don't really feel as safe, of course you're not going to go outside on a walk, a jog, bike like you see in these white neighborhoods, walking their dogs, biking and all of that. Like you don't see that in the hood. You don't regularly see people walking and biking and things like that in the hood. You see that mostly in white neighborhoods with their dogs and with their music in their ears, things like that. Like that's just something I know for me, like growing up, I would never walk in my neighborhood, or I would never feel comfortable walking in my neighborhood. Even if I was with another person, I would not want to walk or bike in my neighborhood like that. And then the last social determinant of health is social and community context. So this is your relationship with your family, your friends, your community, and your co-workers. And everyone doesn't come from a happy home. Some people, their homes are traumatized and they cannot come back home. They get kicked out of their house. There's a lot of trauma at home for some people. So you can't control, who your parents are or who your family are. And sometimes that really impacts your health based on how your family and your community is. Because if your family, let's say one of your parents is abusing drugs, then that will impact your health for sure. And when I say health, I'm not just talking about physical health. There is mental health as well. So mental health is just as important as physical health. So all of these things, they can impact your health, not just physically, but also mentally. So it's very important to grow up in an environment that you feel safe and where you feel comfortable and where you are not experiencing lots of trauma. And unfortunately, a lot of Black and brown people do have to experience trauma growing up where they live. So clearly, all of these things disproportionately impact minority communities. And now I'm going to show this diagram where it shows basically a domino effect. In my opinion, it shows what areas impact health outcomes the most. So first, you see 40% of health outcomes are impacted by socioeconomic factors, including education, job status, family, social support, income, and community safety. And then 10% is impacted by your physical environment. However, on the side of that diagram over there, you can see that it says that your zip code and where you live impacts 50% of your health outcomes, because your physical environment impacts your socioeconomic factors. So where you live impacts your job status, it impacts your income, it impacts your community safety, all these socioeconomic factors. So 50% of your health outcomes come from where you live, come from your zip code, which is insane. This actually made me think of this documentary called Milwaukee 53206, and it talks about the stories of those living in the zip code that incarcerates the highest percentage of Black men in America. So literally, your health outcomes are impacted by your zip code, where you grow up. Incarceration rates, if you're more likely to go to jail in your lifetime, is impacted by where you live. So getting back to the diagram, 30% of health outcomes are impacted by health behaviors such as tobacco use, diet and exercise, alcohol use, and sexual activity. However, the way that I'm breaking this down and analyzing this diagram, this is also impacted by your physical environment, your health behaviors, as I was saying, with tobacco use in the drugstores and liquor stores on the corners in urban neighborhoods. That is going to increase tobacco use. So basically 30% of health outcomes, as I said, are impacted by health behaviors, but that also goes back to the physical environment. And also with diet and exercise. So as I was saying earlier with the grocery stores, I know in my neighborhood we have grocery stores, but it's not like a regular grocery store, like a Pick and Save, like a Whole Foods, like a Walmart, I forgot what the radius is supposed to be, but for a food desert, so if you don't know what a food desert is, basically a food desert is a part in the city where they don't have access to a healthy grocery store within so many miles. So I don't know how many miles it has to be, but there are definitely grocery stores in my neighborhood, but they're off brand. It's called so and so food and liquor store, or it's just something foods. It's just regular, or it's random corner stores. It's not any type of Walmart, Pick and Save, Whole Foods. And it's why can't we get a Pick and Save, Whole Foods, regular grocery stores like that? Why we gotta get stuck with these grocery stores that nobody has ever heard of? I'm pretty sure if I named off one right now, I don't think they're chains. I think it's just a one grocery store, and it's just there, because a lot of the grocery stores are named after the streets. So let's say you live on a street called Oak, it will be like Oak Food and Liquor Store, basically, is what I usually see in my neighborhood. And it's like, why can't we get a Pick and Save? Why can't we get a Meijer? Why can't we get a Kroger? Like, you know, so basically like the 30%, that goes back into the 50% that we just saw with the socioeconomic and physical environment. So right now we're at 80% of your health outcomes are impacted by your physical environment. And the last section is healthcare, access to care, and quality care. And I believe that, as I said earlier, that is also impacted by where you live. The hospitals that you have access to are readily available to you, and also health insurance, things like that. I believe that is also impacted by your physical environment. It can also be impacted by your socioeconomic status, because some jobs, they do come with like health insurance, things like that. But if you're unemployed, then how are you getting your health insurance? And some jobs, I don't know if all jobs come with health insurance, you know. So if you're unemployed, then you just don't have health insurance, which is not fair. So as you can see, basically in my eyes, when I break down this diagram, 100% of your health outcomes is from your physical environment, and it's from where you live and where you grow up. And we also saw this during this panoramic that we're still in, how COVID-19 rates, they were higher in minority communities. Cases were higher in minority communities because of all of these factors. So just with this pandemic, we were able to see the truth in how these social determinants of health really do impact health outcomes. And a lot of people don't really think about social determinants of health. They don't think about how these sociological factors impact your health outcomes. A lot of people just think like, I feel like a lot of healthcare physicians, they kind of just focus on the medicine and don't focus on the sociological factors that impact, like maybe why this person has diabetes in their family or has high blood pressure in their families. People don't think like that for some reason. I guess if you don't come from a neighborhood or you don't really know these things, then it's not really second nature for you to put two and two together, like, oh, the reason why these health outcomes are the way they are is because of where I live. So I really wish that more like physicians and healthcare professionals were trained in a way to understand social determinants of health and to understand how heavily they impact health conditions, instead of just trying to treat conditions, instead of actually fix the socioeconomic factors, because those health conditions are always going to be there if those socioeconomic factors, physical environment, all of that does not change. Not saying that you have to move, but at least the socioeconomic factors such as like jobs and employment and educational attainment and things like that, like at least try to focus on those things and look at how those things impact a person's health. Also, what's going on in the home. Like I feel like physicians, I guess the physicians, like their job is just to treat conditions and to see you. And I guess more so like social workers and community health workers, they are more so in a place to actually ask those questions and look at the sociological factors. But I do feel like physicians should get that same training as well, because I feel like more physicians would be more empathetic, because empathy, I feel like, is very lacking, especially with physicians who take care of patients of color. So I think it would be important for physicians, if they don't, or just healthcare professionals in general, if they don't already have some type of training, to learn about the social determinants of health and have also cultural competency in certain areas when they are taking care of or have patients that are from diverse backgrounds. So now for the end of this video, I'm just going to discuss some of my solutions that I think that could help solve these health outcomes. So as I keep saying, basically our health outcomes are impacted by where we live. So a solution to that, of course, is not going to happen overnight. That is why I am going back to school and getting my master's in urban studies, because I really feel passionate about this topic and urban revitalization. So basically revitalizing urban neighborhoods so that there's not a drug or liquor store at the corner of it, and that there are grocery stores, and that, there's less homelessness, and, fixing those socioeconomic factors. So that's what I'm studying in school and will be starting this fall. But I think that some people confuse urban revitalization with gentrification, and I personally do not support gentrification, and would rather, because I feel like with gentrification you really just kick out the people in that neighborhood, everything goes up, and it's like you basically turn it into like a little portion of town that's like white. And because like usually like white people move there and like they put a whole bunch of stuff there, a little Starbucks or something, like in grocery stores, but it's like y'all kick all the people out the neighborhood who actually need those resources. So I am in support of urban revitalization, not through gentrification, and that's what I think a solution is to these health outcomes, is changing the urban environment, and also rural revitalization, just because they are in the outskirts, and them not having access to healthcare, and also having to drive far away for like jobs and things like that. Like that, I feel like also needs to be fixed as well. So revitalizing neighborhoods, I would say, is one solution, which will of course take a while, and there's also certain laws and policies in place in order to change neighborhoods. Another solution I would say is natural healing and holistic healing, because health is not just physical. I believe it's mind, body, and spirit. So I feel like we should be focusing on all three, and especially with my internship this past summer, not just using like traditional medicine to treat conditions, but actually using like natural medicine, like herbs, to heal conditions, because doctors are always going to just continue to prescribe you medication, and then that's going to be it. It's just going to be treating your condition until you die. But with herbs, you can actually try to heal your condition. It's not necessarily a guarantee, but it's more likely to heal your condition than to just treat it. And also, you can't just take herbs and that's it, but also, you got to do the physical, you got to do the mental, you got to do the spiritual. You have to do and focus on all three in order to really improve your health outcomes. And I wish that health wasn't just so focused on just diet, just exercise, just medicine. Like there's so much more. So like with mental health, making sure you're meditating if that's something that you like, or doing yoga, which is something that I like to do, or journaling to let out your emotions, because way too many of us don't feel enough, and we don't let out our emotions, and we just bottle it all in. So doing things to take care of your mental wellness, even going to therapy. I am an advocate for therapy, and if you can afford it, of course, because not everyone can afford therapy. So mentally, and then if you have faith in something, or if you have spiritual practices, you don't have to be religious, but spiritual practices that keep you and your spirit well. So I am a strong advocate for holistic healing, and I think that's also a solution to these health outcomes and lowering health disparities. And those are basically my two main solutions for this. But I did research over 200 herbs this summer, and if you all want me to do a video on herbs, or you want me to talk more about them, then definitely comment below and let me know. Or you can comment a condition or a disease or illness, and then I will do a separate video on what herbs help with those conditions, because herbs are basically the same thing as traditional medicine, but they're kind of like less potent. They're just because they're natural. So if you think about Vicks Vapor Rub, so with Vicks Vapor Rub, like it smells a lot like eucalyptus oil, which is a natural herb and natural essential oil. So Vicks Vapor Rub has some essential oil in it, and then they put their own whatever they put in it. So that's what they do for a lot of traditional medicine as well. They might put a little bit of herbs, and then they put the other traditional chemical whatever stuff for the medication. So that was the end of this video. I hope y'all enjoyed learning about the social determinants of health, and let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I will see y'all in my next video.